Hello and welcome to Season 5 of Be the Good with Kate Chericello. How are we here already? Honestly, it comes down to that first step. Taking an idea, then taking an action on the idea. Getting on that train, so to speak. And now, over 50 episodes later, here we are. And that's a recurring theme with every guest. We all have the power to make a difference. And once we take the first steps, we can amaze ourselves with what we are capable of and how we can make the world a better place. Be the Good with Kate is all about people doing good in the world while following their passions. Good for their own souls and for others. I get so excited about each and every episode of Be the Good to share with you, and I hope you find inspiration in these people and stories. If you're new here, welcome, and if you're returning, thanks so much for your support. I'm so glad you found Be the Good and would love to hear from you. If you also want to continue to spread these stories of good news, I'd be thrilled if you shared via Instagram, Facebook, email, however you can. Every share, subscriber, like, review on podcast platforms, comment, and so on helps me to share these guests' wonderful works to more people. Thank you for your help in this. Now, on to this week's episode. Let's spread a little more goodness in the world.
Today's guest is George Siegal. He joins me from Tampa, Florida, and he is the founder of Move the World Films, the podcast Tell Us How to Make It Better, and the documentary The Last House Standing, plus so much more. And I'm really looking forward to getting to dive in with him today. So George, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me on, Kate. I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. So please tell us more about who you are and what you do in your own words.
Well, I'm a documentary filmmaker / podcast host, which it seems like everybody in America is a podcast host now, right? We've all got them. But I started making documentary films several years ago, and the podcasting thing just became another way of meeting people, finding interesting stories. You know, I call it Tell Us How to Make It Better, because throughout my life, I hear people complain about problems. And my thought is, well, why don't you just do something to make it better? Don't just complain about it. So I started this podcast where every week I talk to people who have identified a problem and are doing something to make it better, which goes and circles back. That's my Jen Psaki, circles back to what my films are about, and that's making things better. It's trying to solve problems and show real world solutions that can solve problems. Because I like artsy documentaries, they're fun, but I really like the ones that tackle problems and show you that there's something we can actually do about it.
I love that. And you're so right. I feel like every other conversation with a person involves the other person saying something that they're frustrated with. And me asking, so what did you say, or what'd you do, or what'd you ask? And it's usually this, so I'm so grateful for people like you who are asking those questions and really then searching for the results and making the changes.
Well, that's such an important part of it. You know, it's like, it's very easy to complain. And if you're in a workplace or you're in school or you're out with your girlfriends or your buddies, people complain. They just like to bitch about stuff. And,
we all do it. Yeah.
It's such pointless, time wasting stuff. I mean, it can be fun for a little bit, but let's actually improve something. You know, our country is so divided politically. It seems like nothing gets done in anything. So if I can tackle something and say, look, here's a problem, and you can actually do something about it, I think that's pretty exciting.
Absolutely. So please tell me how you got to this point of creating films about this topic and just your path here.
It's a long and windy road. I got out of college. I graduated from UCLA and went into television news. And I was a TV weatherman for a number of years. I was a feature reporter. I ended up doing a sports trivia show. I did a lot of things in front of the camera. I know you said you like media stuff. I interviewed a lot of celebrities over the years and met a lot of interesting people. But when I got out of that business, I wanted to do something where I was more in control of my destiny. In the TV news business, today's stars, tomorrow's, they throw you on the garbage heap if you don't fit their what their goal is. And so I've started making documentary films, and that has its own set of challenges. But when you're finished and you can look at it and go, wow, I feel pretty good about that. Now I hope it makes a difference as I throw that out there. That's a pretty fun feeling. And so that's what I direct my energies towards now.
Excellent. How did you decide, okay, I'm going to do documentary films, but I'm going to specifically hone in on this idea of Tell Us How to Make It Better, on all of that?
Well, that's pulling from stuff I did in TV news. A lot of times as a weather anchor, weather reporter, you would be covering tragedies with people. You would go out when their house blew down. I went to Moore, Oklahoma in 1998, and I interviewed a woman who the only thing left on the slab of her house was a mattress and the bathtub. Everything else was wiped clean, and she held that mattress over herself and survived, but she didn't have a storm cellar. She had no plan for a tornado. I would do flood stories where people's houses would wash away, and they would just, like The Rock in San Andreas, they would say, what do we do now? We rebuild. And it's like, well, maybe that's not the right answer. Maybe rebuilding in the place where your house was just obliterated isn't the right decision. So I focused a lot of energy on weather-related stories. My first film was actually about parenting because I have 5 kids, and I consider myself just an average parent. But I think parenting is the kind of thing where anybody can get the job without any requirements. And maybe a lot of people shouldn't be parents, as we see, with what happens in society. So the film was called License to Parent. I wasn't actually advocating having a license, although it might not be a bad idea. It would probably never happen. But so I that was a similar theme to my documentary, The Last House Standing. It's about a problem and about solutions.
So please tell listeners what Last House Standing is about.
The Last House Standing features a house that in Mexico Beach, Hurricane Michael in 2018 wiped out most of the community. And there was one house standing strong on the beach. And so it was the metaphor for what my thing is the theme of what I try to say is, you want to be the last house standing. You want to do everything possible that your house survives a disaster. And that could be not just from hurricanes or floods. It could be from fires. It could be from earthquakes. It could be from tornadoes. There are things everybody can do to be safer than they are. I think we just blindly buy homes and move into places because we like the icing on the cake and we don't really know what the ingredients are inside it. And the ingredients are what can get you killed. The ingredients are what can have you lose everything that your family's worked for. Your home is your most valuable possession. And we interview people who have been through disasters and see all that they've lost and to see what they might have been able to do differently to have a different outcome.
What is the process for putting together a film like that? From the standpoint of, it's not just here's a script and then, that kind of step by step. I mean, you are diving into communities and I'm sure talking to a lot of locals. How do you build that team? How do you know what the next step is? Just all of that.
A documentary is very different than a feature film, because a feature film, they have a script and they shoot off of that script. When you're making a documentary, you're kind of going out there and finding the story as it evolves. So you're working off of an outline. And so you try to find key themes that would fit into your story without preconceived ideas of what you want to find. Like, it would be easy to go out and find all poorly built houses, but then you're not showing another side of it, which is what a well-built house is. So you try to get all the anchor points for your film. We tried to get the FEMA director in our film. That took over a year, and they finally let us in to talk to the FEMA director at the time. And that was an important interview for us. And we got another gentleman to be in the film that I saw on 60 Minutes. And I thought, this guy was great. His name is Henk Ovink, and he's from the Netherlands. He was a water ambassador. He's known as the water ambassador of the world. President Obama brought him in after Hurricane Sandy, and he was instrumental in rebuilding that community and giving them guidance. It took me a year and a half to get him. And then you have to go to victims of storms, and you have to have them have the confidence that you're going to tell their story properly. So in some sense, it's a lot of work to get all the pieces together. Then you have to have a team. When you're a small production like I am, you have freelancers and a few core people that you work with, and you just travel to all these places, and you go into town for 2 or 3 days, 4 days, and you try to get as many of the elements as you can to put your story together. Then you come back and you have all this footage, and then you try to put it together in a way that it's compelling for people to watch. You can throw a bunch of facts together, but if they don't make sense, if they're not weaved together properly and in a way that makes it interesting to people, nobody's going to watch. And then you have to get music for it to score it afterwards. Then you have to get it closed captioned if you're going to air it in certain places. There's a million things that are involved. And when you're done and you look at it, you go, wow, how did I do all that? That's pretty amazing. It's a great feeling.
I'm so glad you talked about it too, because I'm sure that a lot of listeners are saying like, wow, that many steps, I'm in the entertainment industry, and there's so many steps that I don't always think about when it's not, my pocket of knowledge. So absolutely fascinating. Talk about patience and persistence. You
really have to have those qualities, because a lot of people, first of all, a lot of people aren't going to want to talk to you. And then you also want to make sure that you're portraying them accurately. For example, when I was doing License to Parent, I was interviewing two parents that had their children taken away from them because they were abusing drugs. And I'm sitting there interviewing them. And I said, look, let's stop right here. I want you to understand, when the film comes out, you're not going to be portrayed as a good parent. You're going to look like a drug addict who lost their children. And if you're not comfortable with that, you should not do this. If you're going to not like living with that, you shouldn't do it. And they understood that, and they still did the interview. Some producers will talk to anybody and stick them on camera. You know, if you look at a Michael Moore film, you know, his idea is to catch you looking like an ass and putting it in his film. I'm more respectful of people than that. You know, you have to work a little harder to be an ass in my film, because my goal is to treat you the way I would want to be treated.
So that moves so nicely into my next question. What are some of those good news moments along the way of people you've helped, communities you've been a part of, just I love good news moments from people's stories.
You know, there's a lot of them. In every market I was in, I was involved with the Jerry Lewis telethon, you know, the muscular dystrophy telethon. That was always really fun to be there doing something that, you know, was making a difference and helping people. Other times there's other, you know, nonprofits and things that you meet along the way that you can go and speak to and be involved with as you're part of the community. And then in storm coverage, when you have breaking things, when I was working in Detroit, we had a big snowstorm. We're on the air for 10 hours talking about it. And afterwards, you find out that you really made a difference for people, that you were very helpful in getting them to where they need to go. In San Antonio in 1998, we had a major flood, and we were on the air for 2 days. And people appreciate that because you're their lifeline in that situation. You know, when you're in the news business, you get these adrenaline rush, big moments where you have to, you know, sink or swim. It's your chance to shine. And you don't get that adrenaline rush with a film because everything is slower. You know, you don't want to rush. You have to light everything. You have to do things properly. So those are probably the biggest moments I remember, are big news days where you have to step up. That's your job. That's what they're paying you for. And when you can do that, it's a great feeling.
Wow. What is it like to have 10 hours that you need to just stay and keep going and keep talking and keep educating and keep, I don't know, fill in the blank of everything else?
You don't really think about it. You just kind of get in the moment and you do it. And, you know, you see that a lot if you were watching Hurricane Ian coverage several weeks ago. But when this airs, when you see breaking news, when there's a shooting, when there's a bombing, when there's a war, and you see these correspondents that are out there risking their lives, they're not really sitting there thinking about the amount of time they're doing it. They're just focused on doing their job. And you kind of crash at the end when, you know, you can finally go, it's over with. But those people all do amazing work. I think we take a lot of it for granted. You know, so much of it is now opinion driven. Everybody choose their sides media things. But when you see a true breaking news event where all that baloney gets thrown out and they're just doing their jobs, that's when I like watching TV news. I don't like watching on a slow night when they're sitting there ripping the other side. That's the easy stuff to do. But when the World Trade Center, what a tragic event that was. But when you see how the media covered that and all came together to try to tell that story, those are the moments that you go, wow, they're doing their job, as opposed to just picking their side.
That's a great example. So what are some sayings or quotes or mantras that have gotten you through the challenging times, be it from those days or from the podcast, documentary filmmaking?
Well, one of the biggest ones, my dad used to tell me, you know, he used to say this to me all the time growing up, and I just thought it was so stupid at the time. He would talk about, give me a lever big enough and I could move the world. And it was by, I think, Archimedes. It was a saying that he just really liked. So on my Move the World Films logo, it's two people with a large lever cranking the world. And I have an animated version of it where you see them grunting and then it moves just a tiny bit. And that's based off of what he had been telling me my whole life. And I go, wow, that really does, that's kind of the theme here. You're not going to actually move the world, but if you can nudge it just a little bit, you can make a difference. So that's one of the ones that I actually threw into everything that I do on a regular basis.
I love that. So now if someone came to you and they wanted to make a difference, because you obviously have such a track record of doing that for sure, but this person didn't know where to start, they felt overwhelmed, is there any advice you'd give them?
Yeah, the first thing is, don't just sit there and talk about it for years and be one of those people that go, yeah, I used to have great ideas. You have to fearlessly go for it. And you don't have to, a lot of people say, well, I don't have the money. I don't have this. I don't have that. That can be a real hindrance, especially in making a documentary film. But we live in a world right now where anybody can throw something up on social media, and for some reason it catches fire. I made a video one time I thought was great. I was going to put it up there and get hundreds of thousands of views. And I think a few hundred people saw it. And then that same day, some pimply-faced kid lip-synced a song. He ended up on the Today Show the next day. He got over 1 million hits on whatever platform it was on. And to me, that's the frustration and the beauty of the world in one little story. Because you can have an idea, so just go for it, get it out there. But just start doing it. Start writing down what you want to do. Talk about it with friends, get feedback. Because sometimes people who aren't a big producer or a famous person can get access to people you think may never even talk to you. Because you're just some little guy, little man or woman that walks in there and goes, hey, I want to talk to you about this problem. And you might be able to do it. So don't sit on your idea. Find a way to go for it so you don't leave any regrets on the table.
George, wonderfully put. Please tell us where people can find you. Tell us about the projects we can find and watch online and any of your social handles.
Well, the documentary film, The Last House Standing, is on thelasthousestanding.org. You got to put the word "the" in front of it. And, you can rent it for $3.99. But if you say, I don't want to give this lowly producer director $3.99, you can get it on Tubi television for free. You got to watch their commercials. You can get my other film on movetheworldfilms.org. License to Parent is on there. And then my podcast is on every podcast platform. Tell us how to make it better. And that website is tellushowtomakeitbetter.com. I have 55 episodes that are out there so far. And I would love for you to just check it out and tell me what you think. There's a contact form in the show notes. If you hate it, I still like to hear from you. If you love it, I enjoy that even more. But I think all opinions are valid. I listen. I don't always agree with feedback, but I always like to listen to it.
Oh, and that is also great advice right there, right? We all need all sides of the opinions, right?
You got to have a thick skin. If you're putting your face out there, if you ever see those mean tweets that they do, if you're watching Instagram, people say horrible things, whether it's about how somebody's aging, it's about their weight, it's about what they say or do. There's people out there that want to pick on you and be mean to you. And you have to have a thick skin. You just can't care. And that's the downside of social media. I think it's empowered people who probably don't need to have a voice to have one. But that's what you have to put up with. So you just can't let that derail you. Because if you did, you'd stay in your house and huddle up in a corner. I'm not going to let somebody do that to me.
Great. And again, thank you for reminding us not to just talk about something, but to do something about it. And thanks for sharing your background and what you are doing now. And just keep up the amazing work.
Hey, thank you so much for giving me this platform to talk. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for listening to Be the Good with Kate Chericello. Whether you're listening on YouTube or via podcast, it would mean the world if you liked, subscribed, and or left a review. You heard about the good? Now go out and be the good in your life this week. If you have stories of good news that need to be shared, please send me a message. Thanks again and have a great week.